Hey everyone, my name is Rania, and today I wanted to talk to you about a book that I read a while ago that's been haunting me ever since, and that is Educated by Tara Westover. Educated is a memoir that was released in 2018, and there was a lot of fuss about it in the media, so I was intrigued. I wanted to know what was it about. And now that I've read it, I can assure to you that it is definitely worth the hype and it is as brilliant as everyone said. Tara Westover was raised in a Mormon survivalist home in rural Idaho in the United States. Her father was very skeptic about the government and he had a lot of non-mainstream idea about doomsday. For example, he believed that doomsday was coming and he needed to prepare for it, and that the government was evil and they're basically out for their blood. Meaning that they lived in the mountains in sort of an isolation, in partial isolation, let's say that. One freaky thing about the book was that they were not allowed to go to the hospital when they were injured, and that would have been fine, but her father owned a junkyard and most of the kids worked with him in the junkyard, and they would get injured all the time. For example, her mother had a brain injury once, and Tara had stabbed in her leg by something or the other. Accidents happened all the time, and they would refuse actually to go to the hospital and treat it, instead relying on herbal remedies. Let me get back to the educated part. Tara has never stepped a foot in the classroom until she was 17. In her memoir, Tara talks about her childhood experience growing up in these conditions, and it made me think about a lot of the things that I take for granted in this life. For example, the fact that she didn't have a birth certificate until she was, I think, 10. She also does not have a birthday, meaning that they do not know exactly when her birthday is. I think she narrowed it down into 2 days, which is something that all of us we take for granted. We all have birthdays somehow, but Tara does not because she was not registered. For me personally, reading this book in North Africa, Tunisia, I was just so shocked that these things could happen and such things could be lived in America. And I'm by all means not the one to idealize America. I am very aware of its flaws and shortcomings, but this book, it's just another level that I never could have imagined. I want to go back to the educated part of the story. Tara has never stepped a foot in the classroom until she was 17-year-old. And then she would go on to get a degree from Birmingham University, and then she would go and get a master's degree from Cambridge, and then a PhD. Tara in her book makes sure to mention that while her parents pretended like they were homeschooling her, she did not do much of homeschooling. Instead, Tara grew up just not knowing anything about the word. She was very isolated from the word, and she was just living in this small bubble that didn't know anything about the world. And then as she started to grow up, being 16 and 17, she just realized that she cannot go on living like this. As you can imagine, growing up in such conditions without education, I think she started working for her father when she was 13 or 12. I honestly cannot even find a word to describe it. More than that, she started working for her father since she was 13 or 12, if I am correct about that. Her older brother was abusive in a way that he would hit her. There was this mind-blowing part where she talks about her daily life as if she would make sure to clean the toilet before lunch because she knew that her head would be shoved down it later on. Her brother was abusive and her parents didn't really do much to stop him, and her life was a living hell basically, and she was just 16 and 17. When she got to 17, Tara decided that she did not want to continue on living like this and she needed to get out. So she had to teach herself basically everything that people learn in throughout high school and preschool and all of that in order to take the ACT so she could get into college. I have always praised myself for my ability to teach myself a lot of the skills that I have. I like being self-taught and I enjoy it, but This woman taught herself algebra. She taught herself everything that I learned in high school all by herself, and she took the ACTs and she was admitted into college. My favorite part in the book was when Tara went to college, and for the first time in her life, she found herself in a new environment that the Book of Mormon couldn't have prepared her for, which is the real world. She talks about how in college she discovered things that we take for granted. Like, for example, one time in her class, she raised her hands and she asked about the Holocaust, because up until then, she's never heard of the Holocaust. She's never heard of the civil rights movements in the 60s. She's never heard of a lot of things that surprised her, and she had to go home and learn about them. Obviously, Tara's experience is really extreme, but I found it very universal, the way that everyone, once they grow up, come out of their shell, they realize that their parents are not perfect. They see the limitations of their parents as human beings, and they start to think for themselves and adopt new ideas and adopt new opinions that they teach themselves they had to find in the real world. And I think that that part is completely humane and it's universal, and of course I identified with. I, like Tara and everyone else alive, have been taught many things about my immediate environment that I now consider to be wrong. And I can remember the exact moment when I was reading a book or researching something and I realized that that's not what I believe in, and that's not what I want to believe in, and I don't want to be one of those people who believe in that thing. And of course I had to change my mind. But for Tara to have that thing be the history of slavery, or the fact that Europe isn't a country as she used to think, it's just amazing to watch that. Talking about her experience going from uneducated to educated, I was very fascinated by how candid and honest she was about how naive she used to be. When talking about her journey going from an unschooled teenager to someone who has a degree from Cambridge University, Tara talks about how education has changed her life. Often we come to think about education and degrees as a means to an end. We go to college because we want to have a job. We went to college because we want to have a job and gain money, most importantly. But for Tara, education is never about money, and it's not about getting a degree or the job. I think that we take it for granted how much education affects our lives, and Tara in the book does mention this a lot and insist upon it. For her, education is a journey to self-discovery. To study, to have a degree, is to learn more about the world and thus learning more about yourself. Education is not about getting a degree or a job. It's about understanding ourselves, and it's about growing. It's about understanding our pasts, understanding our present, in order to be fully capable of deciding what we want to do in the future, who we want to be in the future. Tara Westover's memoir is truly an inspiring and unique story that I think everyone should read and everyone can learn something from. It's an easy read that anyone can read, even if you've never read a book in your life. This is a great book to start with. It's a brave story that teaches us that listening to our inner voice might be one of the most challenging things that we do, but it is a must that we all do it. I highly recommend you check out this book, and I hope that you enjoy it, because honestly, I don't think that I've ever read anything that could be this much different from my life, yet it is very relatable in an odd sense. And with that, I will end this video. Let me know if you've read any book like this, or if you've read a memoir that has fascinated you so much. Let's talk about memoirs, because they are important to read and talk about. And I wish you all a good day. Salam.